So today I want to take you through the executive summary for the Digital Bill of Rights. And we'll get that on screen now. This is the executive summary, and I want to go through it with you, and we're going to take it in small pieces. This will be the first part of the Digital Bill of Rights that would be presented to government. So the executive summary. This Digital Bill of Rights provides constitutional level protections against the erosion of fundamental freedoms through digital systems. As governments worldwide implement digital identity schemes, central bank digital currencies, and biometric surveillance infrastructure, the UK faces an urgent choice. Enshrine digital rights now, or risk irreversible loss of personal autonomy. So that's the first paragraph. That's the purpose and the urgency. And I want to draw your attention to a key phrase in that paragraph. And the key phrase is constitutional level protections. That's really important because there are three parts to that constitutional level protections. So the first part is it's the highest tier of authority or protection that we can have. Constitutional level protections. It's the highest tier of protection that we can get. So it's something that's big enough to be treated as a fundamental rule of the system when it comes to digital infrastructure. So constitutional level protections are big enough to be treated as a fundamental rule of a system. And the third part, this isn't a detail. This is the foundation that everything else depends on. So it's not a detail, it's not a by the by. This is the foundation that everything else depends upon, that everything else gets built upon. The Digital Bill of Rights. It's constitutional level protection for us. So moving on to the core threats. I've done videos on the core threats, so you can go back and look at those. We haven't covered CBDCs yet because they haven't actually been put in place, or they haven't been put upon us by our government yet. But the core threats that are addressed: mandatory digital identity, systems that become de facto compulsory through administrative coercion, creating a unified national database linking every citizen's movements, transactions, and behaviour. So the digital ID is the overarching, coordinating piece of this puzzle. Without the digital ID, none of the rest can be put in place. The digital ID, from the government's point of view, is the crux of being able to implement all the rest of it. So we know that they would like us to have a digital ID. We know they tried to push it upon us already. They've tried to push it upon us, and it was shouted down in the House of Commons by a whole gaggle of MPs who got together under Rupert Lowe and said, no, this can't be done. However, they are still trying. They're still trying to do it through the schools, the Children and Schools Bill. They're trying to do it through making sure you're over 16 to utilise the internet or any form of social media. So that's the workaround. So this bill identifies that mandatory digital identity has to be stopped. So that is the core threat. That's why it's at number 1. Number 2, programmable currency. CBDCs, so central bank digital currency, capable of restricting purchases, imposing expiration dates, or enabling financial censorship based on behavior or social credit scores. So that is the threat number 2. Once they get rid of cash and they have everything as part of the CBDC, the central bank digital currency, they can say, oh yeah, you've earned that money. However, you have to spend it on this. You can't spend it on that. Now, it's your money, you've earned it, that's absolutely fine, but there are conditions placed upon it now. You can't spend it, you can't walk and have, I don't know, they might turn around and say, right, we don't want you to eat a certain amount of meat anymore. Anything over that, you won't be allowed to purchase. And you could sit and say, well, you can't dictate what I can eat and what I can't eat. Well, if they have control of your money, yes, they can. So that's threat number 2. Threat number 3, biometric surveillance. Mass facial recognition and gait analysis systems that eliminate anonymous movement in public spaces, creating a persistent surveillance state. So that is the threat number 3, biometric surveillance. And it's not just, like we've already said, when it comes to this bill, it's not just facial recognition. This is how you walk. So they'll be able to recognize you from how you walk. This is how you talk. So if they have voice recognition, and you will be watched wherever you go. So if you wanted to go and have a chat with a friend about getting together and maybe saying that you're very unhappy with the government and you might want to do some form of protesting, you will be seen, you will be noted down, you will be noted as possibly a dissident. And if you're a dissident, that could affect your CBDC. So if you're commenting in public with a friend that you're going to go to a protest, they could turn around and say, oh, well, we're not going to allow access to your money because your face will be recognized by the digital biometric surveillance, and they will have it all linked up to the number 1 threat, which is the digital identity, and everything will stop from there. And threat number 4 is digital exclusion. The gradual elimination of non-digital alternatives, forcing citizens to adopt surveillance technologies to access essential services, things like healthcare, banking, and civic participation. So once they've got the digital ID in place, once they have your programmable currency, once they have biometric surveillance, they will just do away with your ability to get anything that you need any other way. So they are the 4 core threats that this bill will be addressing. Why existing protections aren't sufficient? Well, current data protection legislation. So you've got the UK GDPR, and that's the General Data Protection Rights, I think. But that's old. That's from EU times when we were part of the EU. The GDPR is an EU initiative. We still have it in the UK, but it's part of the EU initiative, and it's about protecting your rights, but it's about what they can do with the data they already have. And the Data Protection Act 2018 is still in force, and it's still in place and update for 2026. I double checked that earlier. So these focus on consent and transparency, but does not prevent the infrastructure itself. So this is about what they do with your data, not how they get it. Emergency powers routinely suspend rights. So if they decide to send us into a pandemic again, if they decide to do anything along those lines, or, oh, we're at war with Iran, so we need to curb this and we need to curb that. So emergency powers routinely suspend rights. Private sector gatekeepers circumvent public regulation. International obligations are cited to bypass domestic protections. Constitutional level rights are needed to close these loopholes. So that's why existing protections aren't sufficient. So what the bill achieves. So the bill prevents it directly addresses the core threats. It prevents mandatory digital ID, makes identity control a personal right, blocking any system that becomes unavoidable through coercion, incentivization, or minimal elimination of alternatives. It will protect cash and financial freedom. It establishes cash as a permanent legal right, prohibits programmable currency, and prevents CBDCs from being used for behavioural control. It bans biometric surveillance. So it makes the UK a no-scan zone by prohibiting facial recognition and biometric tracking in public places except under special judicial warrant. It guarantees non-digital access. So it requires functionally equivalent page-based and in-person alternatives for all essential services, preventing digital-only citizenship, so that they are directly covering the threats that we've already addressed. And the last one, it closes emergency power loopholes. It explicitly prevents suspensions of rights during crises, national security incidents, or international obligations. So they can't, because it is a constitutional level protection, it supersedes everything else. You cannot try and circumvent it in a state of war or in a state of pandemic. So in the international context, we've put in some examples from the international context. So multiple jurisdictions have experienced rights erosions through digital systems. China, social credit system demonstrates how digital ID, facial recognition, and digital currency combine to enable population control. The EU digital identity wallet, it creates cross-border tracking infrastructure. So if you want, from the UK, if you want to go into an EU country now, you will have a facial recognition biometric taken. So the picture will be a biometric facial recognition, and you'll have your fingerprints taken. Now, as a UK citizen, the only time the police ever take your fingerprints is if you've been charged with a crime. Not arrested, charged. Yet if you go to the EU, they will take your fingerprints and they will do a biometric scan of your face. So no holidaying in the EU for me. India's Aadhaar system, despite being voluntary, became effectively mandatory through service exclusion. So they implemented it and went, oh, you don't have to have it, but they cut everything else out so that, yes, you do have to have it. There's no way of getting around it. The UK has the opportunity to establish a different model. And this is what we're trying to do. One that harnesses technology's benefits while constitutionally protecting fundamental freedoms. And then there's the recommended action. The bill should be introduced at constitutional level legislation, requiring 2/3 parliamentary majority for passage and future amendment. Early adoption provides the UK with a competitive advantage as a jurisdiction that protects both innovation and liberty. Delay risks entrenching systems that are politically and technically difficult to reverse. So we could be the leaders in this, because this digital ID and digital and CBDC is global. This is a global problem. All countries, the global bigwigs want all of us controlled under one digital system. So it's not just the UK, this is worldwide. So with this Bill of Rights, if we can get momentum behind it in the UK, we can then take it to a global stage and show that it is possible to protect our civil liberties and the civil liberties of all the countries that are coming under the same issue.